Flaminia, can you hear me? I see you there, but I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
I did something, so I think that I closed the previous meeting.
Yes, you closed it because I had we have a message saying that the presentation was closed by IRA ASBL and it was closed. So I hope that people will join now in the next session.
The link to access is the same. So
yes, I use the same one. Yes.
Okay. I hope that people will be smart enough to.
yes, I hope so.
Yes,
I hope so.
I tried to send another email from the system, but apparently I could do it just to the panelists.
Okay, I hope that they join. So I think everything is more or less going okay. What do you think?
Absolutely, it was really nice.
Okay.
The presentation was interesting, and we got a lot of participation because it was all the time around the 95 participants, and also the Q&A. I mean, I think you managed it really good. It was nice.
Okay, so let's see what happened in the 2 hours that we have
remaining.
Rest and go to rest. So I'm going to leave the video on, okay, in case you need something, and I'm going to find some questions that we have that I have prepared for the project officer in the next session, okay, Flaminia? But if you need something, tell me.
Okay, in case you need me to, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Antonio. Yes, I can hear you and see you.
Okay. I have.
There
I mean,
is a
yeah, I have to go to the other place. Hold on a second. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah, I've been talking with Beatrice. She told me that we had some problems because we cut the, let's say, the platform. Or
Yes, instead of put it in standby, I close it.
Yeah.
So what I did is to reopen it. Actually, the link is the same, the link to access. So I hope that people will be smart enough to find it. And I
Okay.
just send a reminder by mail to everybody, communicating it.
Okay. Okay, we'll see. Anyway, at 2 p.m. I will start just to show my face and introduce myself as the, let's say, the ERA representative of the management board.
Okay.
And very quick talk, and then I will introduce our policy officer of the European Commission, because I hope, well, I think it's going to be a very interesting talk. So we'll go from there. Let's hope during those 5 minutes that people can join back to the workshop. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We'll see.
Hi, Carlos. I see that you are already connected. Can you hear me?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Ah, okay.
You can hear me, I hope.
So nice to say hello to you.
Yeah, I think you can see me. Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
I can see you. Yes, hello. How are you? So here I'm with Antonio Gartera, is the head of the wind energy department at CNR. So he's going to introduce a bit the ERA and the set wind and so on, and then he's going to introduce you. And after that, we have, I think that some minutes, more than 10 or whatever, for questions. I have some already prepared.
Okay.
And we can talk.
Yeah, I will just steal you like 5 minutes. I don't think it's going to be more than that. And it's just to introduce a little bit what is the ERA, because the workshop is supported by the ERA and SETWIN. It's always good to mention it. So just in 5 minutes, I will be done. And then I give you the floor. And I think there was quite a good expectation for your talk. So I hope we can
Okay,
connect
okay.
with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how it's gonna go. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think that I can give too much details.
Of course.
I mean,
It's a pity.
so
It's a
I think
pity
that I
that
was
it's not.
hoping that we
Yeah.
would get the approval to be able to talk about it openly by now, but because of the whole MFF delay, right, everything has been postponed a bit. So yeah, I mean,
It is always
the
good to
last
know
state that I got is that we'll probably be able to openly talk about the details of our work program more or less like in April or so.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay. Yeah, it's
So-
a pity because we are all wind energy people here, so we have many
Yeah.
questions about wind energy, but okay.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I can always answer questions in a general way and trying to indicate a bit of where we're gonna go. But really, you know, like what normally people want to know is, you know, like, will there be a budget or how much is going to be the budget for this? What's going to be the size of the projects? This kind of a thing. I won't be able to get into details of it, but I can give some general pointers, and I'm happy to take questions and go as much as I can within them. So yeah.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
And the thing, as I said, I didn't prepare my talk to be a full hour, so I think like
yeah.
20 minutes with the 5 minutes of introduction. So we have about half an hour there that I'm happy to take questions. If it goes shorter, it goes shorter. I don't really mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Carlos.
Should we...
I'm just testing. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'll just should I stop sharing just so that you can have control of it?
Okay, thank you.
Antonio.
Hola, Raúl. ¿Qué tal?
Hola, Raúl.
Que os veo ahí. Oye, una cosilla.
Estamos esperando hasta las justo 4 minutos, sí.
Sí, que va a presentar también Charlotte by Hasager conmigo lo de la tarea. Entonces te voy a pasar por chat la descripción suya, su bio para que la presentes a ella también. ¿Te parece?
A Beatriz, sí, que es la que está
Yo presentaré esa
gestionando todo.
segunda parte. Vale.
Muy bien. Bueno, y felicidades por cómo está saliendo, que ya veo que hay mucha gente.
Pues por la
viendo.
mañana ha habido mucha gente. No sé en qué momento te has conectado. Por la mañana sí que hemos estado 100 personas más o menos, ¿verdad?
Sí. Y bueno, y por la calidad de las presentaciones y tal. Ya he visto también la de aerodinámica Gamesa y bueno, las vuestras.
Sí.
Muy bien.
No esperamos menos de ti, ¿eh?
Bueno, es sobre la tarea de erosión, que es un poco, bueno, tiene algunas correlaciones. Sí.
Sí.
Así que bueno, os veo bien. ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo va la cosa?
Pues bueno, Beatriz y yo nos estamos animando a esto y ahora queremos hacer modo telediario porque pensamos que puede tener salida esto a futuro. Entonces,
Sí,
pues bueno,
si se acaba el Wind Energy, nos dedicamos a esto, con nuestros papeles y tal.
Bueno, pues nada, os dejo y nada, pues será por solo saludar un poco, ya que os veía ahí.
Gracias.
Venga,
Gracias, Raúl.
vale, hasta luego.
Ahora.
Ahora. Todavía no hemos empezado.
Hi, Flaminia. Are you in the cloud?
Yes.
Well, I see that people are getting in slowly, but I hope and I believe that there's going to be more people joining on the next minutes. However, I think we should start right now, even though we have some time, and I think we have some margin of time to wait a little bit. But while I do my small talk, I'm sure that most of the people will be joining right now. So I don't know, Betty, you think we should start?
Yes.
Okay, so Flaminia, if everything is okay, let's go ahead.
Okay.
We start. We have to put the...
No? You can start.
O sea, ¿se ve así el lesbian?
Yes.
Okay. Well. Good afternoon. I'm new in the camera, but I've been the whole day in the background, listening and watching all these presentations that I think or I believe they were very interesting. My name is Antonio Ugarte. I'm the head of the Department for Wind Energy at CNER, and I am also part of the management board of the IEA Joint Program Wind. And the IEA Joint Program Wind is supporting this workshop as well as the Set Wind project. The reason for supporting these thematic workshops is because, as an example, the Set Wind is supporting the set plan and the implementation of the set plan for offshore. And with these workshops, what we intend is to bring together the researchers in Europe and around the world, because in the afternoon we will have also people from the United States. And what we want is really to have let's say the trending topics, what is really interesting for the research for the sector, because in such manner, these topics, we hope to, in some manner, to implement them then into the funding programs in Europe. And for this, we also have right now a very interesting talk with a policy officer at the European Commission. Before giving floor to the policy officer, I just wanted to say thank you to Flaminia Roccioni. She is always on the back making possible all these events. So Flaminia, thank you very much. You are doing an excellent work and very fundamental for the success of these workshops, virtual workshops. So thank you. I also wanted to thank you, Beatriz, but she has been the whole day. Because I'm the head of the department, I'm also in the area Joint Program Win Management Board, but the technical work, this excellent work is performed and led by Beatriz. So thank you and congratulations. And after saying all these thanks, I just really to introduce to Carlos Eduardo Lima da Cunha, who is the police officer at the European Commission. He has been working there for the last 3 years, and prior to that, he got a PhD at the Max Planck Institute for Biophysical and Chemistry. And he also performed postdoctoral research at the Stanford University. So with his talk, I think all of us in this sector, we're gonna be interested in knowing what is going to be the calls, the policies for the next 6 years from 2021 to 2027. And I also hope that we can have many questions because, as I said, I think there's a great interest in knowing or having this information. So yes, right now, I think I'm done with my talk, and I'm glad to give the floor to Mr. Lima da Cunha. Eduardo, you're in mute.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I just figured that I could not unmute myself while you're screen sharing. But okay. Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation, for the kind words. While I cannot say that I'm gonna be presenting everything that's gonna be doing all the way to 2027, I hope I can show you a bit of the directions where we aim to go. And I'm going to be touching a bit on a few of the communications that we've published in the last year, mostly in the second semester of 2020, where we highlighted the way of where we think we're going to be going. And in order for everything to make sense, obviously Horizon Zero will need to be able to support those initiatives that we are proposing, right? So yeah, I mean, although I know I have pretty much a long slot, a 1 hour slot, I don't intend to be talking for most of it. If anything, I plan to be talking probably for 20-25 minutes, and then I'll be happy to take questions and just be discussing things as much as we have to. So now if I can just move forward, let me see if I can move. Yes, okay. So just gonna give a quick run through the mill, just explaining a bit of where we are at. One of the things that is interesting about the current period that we are in is that well, Horizons Europe was pretty much just launched a couple of weeks ago, if not last week. And we are now in this kind of a position where we can very nicely look into what we did in Horizons 2020 and where we want to go with Horizon Zero. And I think that this is one interesting thing, because we all agree that Horizons 2020 has been extremely successful from our perspective. It achieved a lot of the goals that we set up ourselves to achieve. It has been very innovative, really promoted a lot of research within Europe and delivered a lot of its goals. And we just want to see a bit more of where actually we are going to be going now ahead, right? And just have a quick look into Horizons 2020 energy project. We can see that over the last 7 years, we spent about 3 billion euros in energy research. From that, about 190 million went to wind energy research. These figures do not include the Green Deal call. So with the Green Deal call, you can add up another like 70 million there. But this is just a general idea of showing like the amount of work they've put in just energy research as a whole, right? You can see that, for instance, a lot of the work has been done on grids and storage. Pretty much almost a third of the budget has gone that way, which is also a bit of a very cross-cutting kind of a topic. We have a lot of topics that have been working that were much more focused on offshore wind energy, but from the grid context. So obviously we had to somehow make a cut there, and that's how we did it. But you can imagine that there's a lot of different ways on how you could kind of have pretty much share that cake or have spliced that cake. So here on the left side, you can see just a few of the different projects that I decided to put it here just to highlight some of them. We have an immense amount of very successful projects, not only Horizons 2020, but FP7 as well. And they are very defining on being the way how we are now at the moment that we are right now. And we're definitely building on this to move forward. When we look also into just the general way on how we have invested in wind research across Horizons 2020, we can see that we have a very cross-cutting style of research. Most of it was within our pillar, which is what we call the secure, clean, and efficient energies pillar. So you can see that pretty much about 190 came from there. But when we start looking to other different kind of areas where there was also funds coming in Horizon Zero, you can see that there was a lot of efforts also on Mahikohi actions, on innovation through SMEs. There's also another pillar called maritime research, pretty much, in which there was also some research going in there, but the bulk of it definitely is within our pillar. When we look a bit further into this, now combining the data from FP7 and Horizons 2020, we can see a bit on where have been our priorities when we look into wind energy research. So pretty much about half of our investments in the last two framework programs have been on one way or the other offshore technology, right? They are either being on a specific offshore tech, or they have been on floating wind specifically. And I think probably this is not a surprise for anybody, given how much effort we've put into those two different kind of technologies and how much value we see on them on really being the forefront. On the other hand, there is also a very important thing to remember, that there is obviously a lot of, let's put like this, crosstalk, if not a bleed through of research that is done within those different categories that actually also influence onshore research or onshore technology. And another third component that is being extremely valuable has been the research on materials and components. And I would say those are the three main pillars of where we really invested a lot in the past. And the reason why I'm highlight those ones, then I'm gonna show you how ahead we have just published recent communications that are really focusing on those kind of components and how we really see them as something that we really need to look forward in order to be able to reach where we want to reach. So just gonna literally having a passing mention on the Green Deal call. As probably all of you know that we just had these calls that were published. We had a few that were interesting for the wind community. The two that come to my mind is obviously what I would call our call, that was on offshore platforms, and there's also the other one on green ports, which was also looking for interconnecting with offshore energy systems. And both of those calls are now under evaluation. And I mean, from our perspective, they have been extremely successful on the point of like the applications that we got. Let's see now how it's going to be going forward. But it's also something that is particularly interesting, because differently from Horizons 2020 in general, where we're looking at long-term plans or long-term results, the Green Deal call was looking at short-term results, right? So it's something that is slightly different from our perspective, and we're curious to see how it's going to be going out. Just another point that I'd just like to mention before we get into really the let's put like this, the meat of the discussion. is the Innovation Fund, which, as you know, is something that is a program that's not managed by us, but is managed by DG Lima. But it's pretty much a general call that is open for, again, driving low carbon technologies towards the markets. And they just had now the large scale projects call that they just finished, and now I think the small scale ones is still open. I think goes open all the way to March. And I think it's worth keeping in mind. I mean, it's pretty much about, the idea is just bringing those technologies that have been to a certain degree funded by us or not, or can be national fundings or whichever different way, but they are lacking that way of pretty much being able to upscale and get to the market. And that's exactly where the Innovation Fund comes in. So just here, just some general lines on that. I don't need to go too much into detail, but the idea here is pretty much just to create the right financial incentives, and most importantly, is pretty much to sediment our role into a global technology leader. The Innovation Fund is focused on many things. And I said one of the important things there is pretty much the innovative renewable energy generation, which I think is what is important for this community here right now. When we look into the applications of the first Innovation Fund call, we can just have a general idea of more or less which kind of results we've got. So you can see that when we look into this pie chart on the left side, when we look into renewable energy sources, this is where some projects that are related to wind are actually located. So you can see that we got about 58 projects coming within that area. The large majority of it, perhaps 2/3 of it, I would say, that are more on energy intense industries. I mean, which I guess it makes sense given that was the first large scale one, but there was no need for it to be exactly in this kind of a way. And also here on the right side, you can see a bit the geographical distribution of pretty much the partners that are proposing something. So you can see that we have a bit of, let's say, a bit of the usual suspects really trailing on the amount of proposals that have been submitted. Let's see how it's gonna go. But I mean, yeah, this is just, I just want to share a bit with you just to show there is something beyond Horizons Europe, and it's something that might be interesting if there is certain projects and technologies that are already at a further stage, right? Something that an innovation call from our side might just not be there, just because it would be a low TRL to where actually you could be. And this is a very interesting one to bring the TRL even further and actually get to the market. So now that I set up the scene very well, I think, on where we are, what Horizons 2020 has brought us, where the innovation funds is acting to a certain degree parallel to what we wanted to go. The question is, what exactly is bringing us? What will Horizon Europe bring us? And what I want to propose here is just for you to keep in mind that the way how we're looking, despite the timeline of it, is that Horizon Europe is going to be a mean to deliver our main policy goals, which now is the European Green Deal. So it's pretty much Horizon Europe is going to be our main tool for research innovation in order to achieve those goals. So when we look into the European Green Deal, there is a series of different arms, let's put it like this, or policy arms that are involved in this kind of a process. And each one of them have their own kind of little niches where they act a bit more. So there's several of them that I think are relevant for the wind community or for renewable energy community. For instance, the biodiversity strategy for 2030 is something that's one way or the other, while there might not be something directly involving renewable energy, is something that's going to be indirectly affecting how we're going to be able to deploy stuff. When we look into the last one there on the bottom on the left side, the chemical strategy for sustainability, this is a major one that's going to be playing a huge role on how we're going to be able to keep on producing any kind of material or just have any kind of industrial scale as we want it to be. And obviously, we also have on the very right corner on the top, the offshore renewable strategy, which is the one that's really laid out the way on how we think things should be moving forward. So when we talk about the chemical strategy. And I mean, I'm just highlighting here the chemical strategy and the offshore ones, just because I think they're the two that are the most related here. Specifically because they talk about how to increase the deployment of renewable energy, and they specifically talk about doing it in a sustainable way. And this is just two different paragraphs of the chemical strategy that I decided to highlight here. You're more than welcome to look into it if you're interested. But in general, as you can see, we are looking into ways of supporting research and development of advanced materials for applications in energy. And this is something that is going to be extremely important. I'm going to be touching on it later. But in short, we will need to increase the amount of energy to produce, renewable energy that we're able to produce. This means that we're going to have to deploy more. We're going to have larger farms or more able farms. This cannot come at any cost. This cannot be an unsustainable growth, cannot be a disorderly growth. So the sustainability also will play a key role there. And at the same time, being a bit of, depends how you consider, like a bit of a feet on the brake, but at the same time, a bit of an innovation challenge to it. So when we look into the offshore strategy, I think this is really, as I said, as I put it there, really lights the way to where we want to go. It's really about increasing the offshore wind production within the union, and really to be able to tap into this potential that we have. I mean, Europe is in a very interesting position where it's surrounded by ocean or by seas pretty much on three sides. There are seas that they can be very well exploited for this kind of a resource, and something that we need to be able to do it again in a sustainable way. It's not just about putting farms everywhere, right? We need to be able to deal with coexistence of different stakeholders into this, and how can we do that in a way that's, you know, like we address everybody's concerns. Within the offshore technology, strategy, what we did is that we also did a relatively short analysis of different technologies that would play a role in there. And we started first from something as basic as algae and for biofuels and floating PVs, which are in early R&D, but it's something that we think that there will have its own role to play in there, right? Going a bit into the classical ocean energies, right? When we talk about wave energy and tidal energy, going towards what we consider to be a bit more technologies that are a bit more ready for market uptake, which we would include there floating wind and offshore wind. Offshore wind being the one that we consider to be already at a commercial stage, but it's still very much linking and depending on our own further research in order to increase its deployability, increase sustainability, increase the industrial scale, how we can reach it. So, I mean, as you can see, this is more or less the idea of where we think we are able to go. And these are the means on how we can reach that when we talk about offshore energy. So what we have now is a very challenging way forward, right? So if you're looking into the second line, we look into today, the current offshore wind capacity in the EU is about 12 gigawatts. The plan is pretty much in 9 years from now, actually, pretty much, well, increasing that number 5-fold, pretty much getting to over 60 gigawatts, which is a challenge on its own. I mean, obviously took a long time for us to get to those 12. We now need to get to those 60 in order for us to be able to do that internal milestone that we have. So that by 2050, we actually can reach this ominous number of 300 gigawatts. There's obviously the other challenge as well within ocean energy, which we are currently at 13 megawatts, need to get to 1 gigawatt and potentially 40 gigawatts by 2050. So as I said, I mean, we pretty much need to have an exponential growth of sorts when we are actually reaching when we are reaching this number of 2050, right? So the question, as I posed before, is we need to do this in a coordinated way, in a structured way, right? We also need to do this in a sustainable way. And this is exactly where Horizons 2020 can reach or can get there one way or the other. Okay, my mouse stopped working. Here. Okay, so now I'm reaching a bit of a close here on my presentation. As I said, I'm happy to take further questions, but Horizons Europe is going to be an instrument for us to deliver the European Green Deal. There's a series of different instruments that we are using in order to be able to do what we want to be able to do. I'm going to start with the left side because I think it's probably the ones that are a bit easier to explain. So we are proposing to have a series of different European partnerships that, in short, what we want to do with that is exactly address this point that I was saying before, how to coordinate and strategize all those different activities that we're going to have at an European level, at a national level, at a regional level. How can we coordinate all those different activities in a way that, you know, like we can maximize the value of each one of those single instruments, right? If you have it's the classical situation where if we organize everything well enough, you know, like we can just keep on building from the value of it, right? There are areas that already have some interesting regional mechanisms that are involved on providing or promoting the development of local renewable energies. These actually then a national strategy can actually build onto this and provide some further notes to it, and then we can bring the European value into it and connect this into a larger network where it can bring even more funds or even more investors into this. So this is one way on how we foresee these European partnerships. So when we look into wind energy, for instance, there is this partnership that's called the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, which is something that we're very interested to see, exactly because it's bringing a lot of different renewable energy technologies under the same umbrella, and all of them is aiming at pretty much, as I said, coordinate and try to improve the synergies between the different components, so that we can actually reach those goals that we set ourselves by 2030. So it's one that I'm very interested in that. You also have another one that is called the missions. It's a different kind of initiative that we have. The way how our former commissioner used to say is that he was always very interested in the famous Apollo program in the US, how it had that very clear goal and a series of different attempts in order to reach what it was supposed to reach, and that was the mission of the Apollo program. And that's more or less where this name came to us, the missions. And we have missions in several different sort of activities. And there is one mission for oceans, in which offshore energy, for instance, is included in this. And it's one that to be fair, we are still very much working on this. We're still very much looking to see how it's going to be shaping up. But the idea is pretty much trying to also increase the amount of energy that we can produce on energy, while also being aware of the most use of oceans and so on and so forth. So how to really optimize this whole process. We also now have the recently launched European Innovation Council that is also going to be playing a very important role, particularly for SMEs. This one I don't have much further information at the moment, specifically for the wind community. I mean, the only thing I know as of now is that they are going to be setting up specific schemes for different SMEs. They have different paths and so on and so forth, depending on exactly on which kind of instrument the SME would think would be the best one for them to move forward. And we obviously have the European Research Council, which has been already a proven way of providing and promoting research in Europe in many different ways. And then there is what is, I think people normally call our general calls, which is what we call the global challenges. And here I just decided to highlight some of the ones that are the ones that we are really gonna be acting on it, I would say, in the short term. So when we look into pretty much this year, next year, I think that's where we see that we can actually make a strong impact right now, which is looking a bit more into societal engagement. This is something that is extremely important, right? I mean, not only for offshore, but for onshore. For those of you that are based in Germany, like for instance, I am now on TV, we often see a few different documentaries about the installation of offshore or onshore and the villages, how they are reacting to it and so on and so forth. So it is a very lively topic. It is one that people are constantly talking about. Is there a bit of that thing of the pros and cons of having a turbine installed around your village? And I think this is something that it's a topic that needs to be brought up at a European scale, right? I mean, how we're going to be addressing all of this? How can we increase the amount of renewable energy that we have and be happy to live around this? So sometimes it's about engaging more with the society. Sometimes it's about creating new designs that addresses some of those issues. And this is one of the points that we are really concerned about and really going to be putting our weight as much as we can in order to be looking further into this. Obviously, the question of sustainability comes hand in hand in it. And it's also a lot of points onto this whole issue on how to make wind energy more sustainable. We look at the whole approach that we can actually have onto this, not only looking at environment, but also looking at the human component on it. How can we train more people into this? So when we look into sustainability, we're also looking a bit into the educational component to it. And this is something that's going to be very important for us. If you want to be able to reach those goals, it's not only about producing it in large scale, but it's also having the human component that are able to do the installations, do the maintenance, and actually need to be able to have an economy and a living behind all of this. When we look a bit more into, I would say, a bit of like basic research, but looking a lot towards I'll say machine learning or software developments, we are looking a lot into wind forecasting and farm control. Both of those are issues that we still think are very relevant when it comes being able to accurately forecast wind, be it on the design phase to figure out, what is actually happening to a certain area, what's the best design that would fit into that area, but also looking a bit into how external components might change into this. One thing that is obviously let's put like this elephant in the room is that pretty much climate change is upon us. So how is this going to be changing the wind patterns? Is it possible that we are now building a farm somewhere expecting a certain kind of wind flow, and due to climate change, this is the whole thing is out of place? So these are some of those questions that we actually will have to address them by ourselves. So we need to be able to have models that can better address those kind of questions. Farm control goes in the same direction, but instead of looking into a single point, a single area and different areas of the atmosphere, looking more on how to increase the inputs on a single farm. And then obviously two major things that for us are extremely important, which is obviously floating wind. We want to be able to increase the deployability even further. We want to be able to reach further areas. North Sea and the Baltic Sea are extremely interesting, but we also want to be able to see what we can do in the Atlantic. We want to see what we can do in the Mediterranean. And floating in this context is becoming extremely relevant, and we need to be able to further advance this, looking into different designs, looking into different ways on how to which kind of different substructures are actually involved in this, and what are the advantages of each one of them. I forgot to mention also the Black Sea. The Black Sea is also an extremely important component into this. There is a whole segment there that actually is very unique, and all those different designs that we have in floating wind, they all can play a very important role into this. And the topic that is very close to my heart, which is circularity, and it's something that's extremely important to come, as I said, cannot be uncontrolled growth, need to be something that is going to be well, we cannot just be doing something that in 50 years from now, the next generation will need to sort it out, right? It needs to be something that we can do it right now. So what we currently have in Europe is that I now forgot the number from the top of my head, but I would say something like 15% of the current wind farms that we have deployed in EU are older than 15 years old. I need to check those numbers, so if you like, I can check this in a bit. But I think it's more or less like this: 15% older than 15 years, meaning that we're gonna have to deal very early on with a large amount of decommissioned turbines. So how we're going to be dealing with this? I mean, we need to be able to figure out a way on how to deal with this, be it by improving recyclability of composites, or be it by just figuring out ways of repurpose those turbines. But most importantly, we cannot just keep on thinking about it as an afterthought. We need to be proactive now in a way that we are designing the turbines of now and the blades of now, so that we can, in 15 years from it, already have a plan on how we're going to be dealing with this, pretty much making them circular by design. And this is something that, as I said, is extremely important for us. So I think I already talked more than what I wanted to. So I'm just going to be closing here with 2 extra slides, and then that's it. So if I can go back to the very beginning of my presentation, when I talked about Horizons 2020, as you can see on the right side, I have here the general pie chart that I showed you. It's slightly different because in this one I added the Green Deal, but in general, the principle is the same. You can see how pretty much we split our budget. And then if you look at the right side, you can see more or less where our general fund for wind came from. And in gray is pretty much the rest of the funding that was put onto other research, other renewable energies. In yellow is solar energy, just as a bit of a benchmark. So you can see that although actually, for instance, solar and winds are expected to really deliver a lot of the renewable energy that is going to be coming in the future, it's still, at least in Horizon Zero, taking a small part of the share from where things are. And what we are hoping to be in Horizon Zero, and that's the thing we've been striving and really working closely with our member states not to achieve more or less this goal, is having something that is a bit more, let's say, in line with where we want to be. So we want to be in a situation where if wind energy and solar energy are going to be one of the main horses on getting us to where we need to be by 2050, being a carbon neutral continent, we need to be able to pretty much fund this as it is necessary. And this is more or less where we are looking at, pretty much having about half of the energy funds go into those technologies. It's obviously a different, as a hard balance to strike, because we also don't want to destimulate other promising energies. I mean, the renewable energy or mix, let's put like this, of 2050 in Europe should be a mixed one, should not be an overwhelming 1 or 2 technologies. Ideally, every technology has its role to play. So we need to be able to strike a nice balance there, but this is more or less where we are aiming to go. So having that said, while I don't think I can tell you specifically the details on where we will, which kind of a calls we're going to be having by 2027, I can tell you, and at least I hope I made a case for it to show of where we have been acting in a very consistent way with where we want to go. And now in the beginning of Horizon Zero, we managed to shuffle things a bit in order to be even more consistent with where we want to be. And having that said, I mean, as I said, I'm happy to take further questions. So thank you again all for your time. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to read some of the questions that we have here in the Q&A panel, and then some of questions that we have from other sources here at CNR. So the first one is if there is any expectation when the final work programs will be published.
April.
So the thing that you said at the beginning of the talk is that in April everything can be easy. Okay, so I think that Antonio has a question. Why
yes. There was one of your slides that it was bringing the question and the answer closely, but let me explain a little bit, and I'll try to put the question on top of the table. Okay, it seems to be planned for the amount of megawatts that we're gonna put into the energy mix, okay? On the plans of 2030 and 2050, we are saying this amount of renewable energy is going to be in the energy mix, okay? It also seems to be a distribution for the different technologies that a little bit what you were just mentioning, okay? There's gonna be programs for all the technologies. We are planning to have this many megawatts of this technology and the other one, okay? So it also seems to be a plan for that. But the question here is that, is there any plan or strategy for the distribution of the technologies by countries, for example? And I read a couple of months ago something that was a little bit too theoretical, but they were saying, what happened if we put all the solar solutions in Spain, because there's a lot of sun, and all the wind in the North Sea? What will happen at night, you know, because then the grid nodes, how we will manage these grid nodes from day to night, from wind to no wind. And well, that's the question. If there's any, let's say, plans or perspective of doing this kind of a strategy by countries and technologies.
Yeah, so I didn't mention another communication that we have. Well, last year was a very creative year on that point. We launched also the smart sector integration strategy, which we were talking specifically about those kind of different things on how to integrate all those different kind of components country-wise as well, in order to be able to tackle all those kind of different perspectives, all those different kind of energy mixes that we've got. There isn't really a simple way of how to address this. Obviously, I mean, we've been putting a lot of effort into having different kind of storage systems into it. Obviously, one that comes now on everybody's mouth is the hydrogen strategy that is really playing a good role into it, and is one that we can see that it will play a very important role, though it won't be the only one, right? So we also have different kind of activities also with having some multimodal hubs. This is also part of the Green Deal call, which was having a multimodal hub where we can actually connect all those different kind of inputs that we would get, and pretty much centralize the communication into the continent. So this would be one way on how to distribute it further within the continent and concentrate it or converge it when we are actually offshore. So the point that I cannot tell you that there is one technology that we're looking into this. As I said, the same way how we think that for energy generation, there will be a mix of different technologies. For distribution and for storage, there will be a mix of different technologies as well. While when coming to the your point on a geographic distribution per se, we're not necessarily looking at it from that perspective. We're looking into, for instance, having more decentralized systems, specifically with solar energy. This is something that is very possible to be done. With hydrogen, to be fair, it's also possible to be done if hydrogen is generated elsewhere, put into the gas grid and goes elsewhere. It can be generated on site as it's needed. So that's also one component of it. So we've been looking into different ways of how to do it. We don't have a one size fits all or one technology that's going to be starting everything, but we do have this kind of idea. And just to conclude, when it comes to the geographical perspective of it, obviously it's important for us, and this is a bit of the principle of the just transition mechanism, that we don't want to have some parts of Europe shining ahead and some parts of Europe staying behind. We don't want to have somewhere where it's the mecca of solar energy, some parts that are living with coal. That's not the idea. The idea is pretty much bringing everybody together. Obviously everybody at their own pace as much as we can, but bringing everybody together. So this is part of the just transition mechanism, and it's also part of what we hope to get with putting a bit more effort into education, training, and reskilling, in a way that if you have people that are in your country and trained for that, obviously, you know, like there is the interest of that country of also keeping that kind of a knowledge and developing things further there. So it's not, there's not a one size for this, right? It's several different components that all of them play their role.
Thank you, Carlos. Eduardo, I see that this topic is going to be challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read some of the other questions here in the Q&A answer panel. So another one is, if the European Commission wants to boost the use of Copernicus and or Galileo EGNOS satellite-based Earth observation, positioning, navigation, and or related timing services and data. Could you comment how the proposals should make use of it?
Yeah, I can see somebody found the leaked version of our work program, but okay. Well, the idea there is relatively simple. The idea is when we're looking, for instance, into, as I said, let's say that you have a certain site that you want to see or you want to be able to forecast the winds that you have in that kind of area, right? There's obviously different ways of doing this, and one does not necessarily need to use geographical data into it, or does not necessarily need to look into maps. Depending on the model, you're just creating a generic model for this. But one way or the other, probably even if you do develop just a model, in the end, what you probably want to do is challenge it with a certain scenario, with a certain geographic area that you can a bit challenge or train your model. And at that point, that's where we think that using Copernicus or Galileo's data or any kind of a satellite information would be extremely helpful. And more than that, because that information is already there, is already something that we fund, we just want to make sure that you are using pretty much European data as much as you can. So this is a bit of how we would like to see proposals make use of it. Pretty much trying to combine this in this kind of way. Can be, like as a part of a training a model, can be into development of the whole thing itself, can be about having case studies. This is up to the proposal to figure out.
Thank you. I have another question. Are you expecting proposals for low TRL or for high TRL in this?
Well, it depends on obviously on the proposal, or not really the proposal, on the technology. But for instance, I would say that when we look into questions on circularity, when we're looking into questions on floating wind, we are aiming at higher TRL. We are aiming at TRL 7, 8. And this is just, well, floating wind, we already think that we have a lot of low TRL research done in Horizon 2020. Does not mean that we won't have more lower TRL research done in Horizon Europe, but we think we are now at a nice stage where we can actually have a nice innovation action on it. And as I said, with circularity, I think that, or recycling, I think it's something that it's upon us. We need to be able to deal with it as soon as possible. We've had a series of different low TRL research done in this, that each one of them have been doing their own small kind of technology developments, and we had some small successes with small scale kind of research. And what we would like now to have is something on a bigger scale. So from that perspective, I'll look into this more as a high TRL kind of a situation. And for the others, I'm expecting them to be a bit more low TRL kind of a thing. And I think this is more or less what one would expect within Horizons Europe, a bit of this mix of some high TRL and low TRL kind of research, where we think we've built enough from this so we can actually have an innovation action. And this innovation action led to something that is interesting, that it might go to like to an innovation fund or some SME funded or something like this. But some of components of it might go back into our research and innovation action. Depends a bit on how it goes. But from right now, I think those two would be the most relevant ones for our high TRL research.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So this morning we have 3 technical sessions with regard to aerodynamics, loads and control, and the researchers and the speakers explain different efforts in research and innovation. And one question here in the Q&A panel says that how are these efforts are going to be coordinated with the necessary power system and market structure evolution?
Oh, well, unfortunately, I was not there in the morning session, so I'm not sure if I get exactly the context of the question.
Yes, in the morning session we have like a presentation with regard to farm control, wind farm control, floating wind turbines control, many advances that are going to perform, and some of them are going to be soon in the industry, but the other ones are waiting for a long way to be there. So this question, I think, that is related to this topic.
Okay. Oh, I mean, so I'm probably going to be giving a generic question, generic answer, just because I think it's a slightly more complicated question. But I think that's part of what I was mentioning before when I was talking about the clean energy transition partnership is exactly this thing of trying to coordinate different actions and trying to bring a lot of different technology components further just by coordinating regional actions, national actions, and European actions. And I think that's the idea is that by doing this kind of approach, I mean, and when we're talking about those partnerships, we're talking about long-standing partnerships. At least as far as I remember, the idea was having them being pretty much running throughout the whole framework program. So we're talking about pretty much 7 years kind of actions in which one might say that this is not enough to take one technology individually all the way through, but it's able to take different bits and pieces of it, the parts that actually are more promising, and move it further to the next stage. And parts of this is obviously going to be playing into leading it into market uptake. So I think that a lot of those kind of activities are going to be very, very relevant. So when we look into answering specifically the question on the efforts on the RNI, I think that the partnerships would really be one of our main ways of moving this forward.
Okay. Okay. So I have a question about the calls. Are going to be them one phase or two phase calls? Because for the researchers, for us, it's like a different challenge, right? One.
Yeah. I don't think that is clear as of yet. I think that's well, depends on who you talk with. I think that we normally like to think that the 2-stage ones are a bit better, just because it allows us to have a general idea at first and then having a bit more efforts. But the single phase ones are a bit easier to do the evaluation, the whole process. So it depends a bit on how it goes. As far as I understand, I think that's going to be, again, a mix of them, depending on whether they are high TRL or low TRL. But it's not written in stone. Might be that they might all be single stage. So it's last time we were discussing this, there was a bit of a split. So.
Okay, I have here also in a Q&A panel an interesting question that is related to the sharing of information between these projects. So it says, sharing of information is a powerful drive to research and development. How do you see EC can incentivize such sharing within industry, from industry to academia, among operation and maintenance enterprise, between them and developers, etc.?
Okay, wait, now I see. Okay. Yeah, I think this is something that, I mean, within the partnership, let's put like this, let's start with the partnership. I think this would be a relatively easy one, because it's a relatively easy way of coordinate the different responses, because everything should go through the partnership. So I think that's the board that the partnership is going to be setting up, and the governance mechanism is going to be extremely important in this context. Is one of the reasons why we put a lot of effort into getting this right. But that aside, we also have the idea of having, let's put like this, cross-cutting project that is going to be managed centrally. Sorry, it's going to be managed centrally in a way to bridge the different projects altogether. So as some of you might be aware, for instance, there is this kind of a project called Bridge, which pretty much the idea is bringing together different renewable energy technologies, upcoming technologies, and creating a bit of a forum where everybody can communicate with each other. This is something that we are interested in seeing how it's going to go, and we're interested in bringing this even further and having a bit more of this kind of a contact with each other when we specifically look into projects. That aside, we also have other different kind of initiatives, like within the set plan, we obviously have the implementation working plans, which we have, for example, implementation working plan of the offshore wind, where we invite different member states to take a seat and have a bit more of a communication there. So we just have different kind of a mechanisms, and each one of them is a different kind of a, let's put a different group of stakeholders that they can communicate with each other and share this information. I absolutely agree that information sharing is extremely important. Knowledge management is essential for any kind of a long-term plan to work. And I think that we've been putting a lot of effort into this. We potentially could do better and could do more. But I think that right now we have the right structures to do it.
Okay, thank you. So I think that we have time for the last question that we have here in the Q&A panel. So it says that you're having kind of rearrangement in the agency and the general direction. Some officers have been reallocated and so on. Shall you comment which are the reference agencies for wind energy opportunities now? And if possible, to check the project ideas with the officer. How can I find my officer for a call? This is the question. Three questions.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends a bit on what exactly means. So I mean, in principle, INEA is still going to be the contact point for every energy related point. So wind energy is going to remain at INEA. Yes, there is a small restructuring, and there's a new agency coming in, but it's more focused on health. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it at this point, at least not for this community. So then the question is it possible to check the project ideas with the officers? When you talk about the project officers, the ones that are really in the agencies, you could, I mean, I guess depends on exactly which kind of input you want to get. So I think that a lot of communities are used to having one contact point that is the project officer and the policy officer. Now this is going to be split. So the project officer is going to be much more clearly located in the agency, and the policy officer is going to be much more clearly located in the commission. So if the idea is discussing details of the projects, then I would say talk to the project officer, which at that point you already have a project, so you know who your contact point is. But if the idea is just discussing a proposal or an idea of some proposal, then the best thing would be just to contact the policy officer that is on hold of that file. Which, if it's offshore wind energy, at least for the time being, it's me. Then obviously I can point you in whichever direction it is. But I mean, then how can you find the policy officer? Normally, then either would be by contacting your national contact points. The national contact points are always aware of who is the new file holder in case there was a change. So that would always be my go-to strategy. Contact the national contact points. They will know who is the person that is involved on this, and they will put you in touch. If it's about the project, then you already are in a project, so you already have a contact point in the agency.
Okay, so I think that we took almost 1 hour complete of your time, Carlos. So I would like to thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate this. I hope that we have the information soon of this Horizon Europe program especially about the wind energy calls, and we start writing our proposals there. So thank you very much.
Carlos, thank you very much. Very, very interesting your talk. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a great day and a lot of success for the rest of the workshop.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we are going to move now to the the last session of the program. So it is devoted to the IEA task. We have in the morning for those that are connecting right now, especially the people from the US. We have in the morning a presentation from Gerard Scheppers about the task 47, because this is a purely aerodynamics task, and we included it in the morning session, in the aerodynamic morning session. And but this information should be completed now with the informations of other tasks that are running currently in the field of aerodynamics, loads, and control. So we have four different of them. And I'm going to start with the first one, that is task 37. I think that we have already connected Pietro Bortolotti from NREL. I think he's there. So I'm going to introduce Pietro and start talking. I think it has been a long day here for us, especially. So in the US, you are just waking up, but we are going to start now and try to do the last session right on time. So as I told you before, our first speaker is Pietro Bortolotti from NREL. He is a research engineer at NREL, where he has worked for almost 3 years. We can see you now, Pietro. Before his position, he worked in Technical University Munich, where he got his PhD in 2018 in the integrated design of wind turbines field. He studied industrial engineering in Politecnico di Milano and got his master science in TU Delft in sustainable energy technology. So today he's going to describe task 37, focus on system engineering. So you can.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Do you see my screen?
We see your screen, we can hear you, and we see your face too, so you can start. Thank you, Pietro.
Thank you, and we are under heavy snow. It's a challenging winter, you've heard, in the middle of the US, so my apologies if we get if I have to drop out because of an internet cut or anything. Anyway, let's start. So hello, everybody. Thank you for the nice presentation, Beatrice. My name is Pietro Bortolotti, and I'm here representing the IEA Wind Task 37, which I co-lead together with my colleague Garrett Barter at NREL. And the operating agent, which in IEA task terms is the project leader, is Catherine Dykes, now at DTU Wind Energy. She was at NREL when she started the task. At DTU, there is also Fredrik Zale, and then we have Carl Mertz from Sintef in Norway, who is another cooperating agent. Task 37, the title is Wind Energy Systems Engineering, and the overall goal of the task is coordination between systems engineering practitioners across the globe. From a 30,000 feet view perspective, the project objectives and the outcomes of the task are improve quality of systems engineering by practitioners through development of best practices and benchmarking exercises. Let me highlight the best practices and the benchmarking exercises. That's really the main goal and the main focus of the task. And a second goal is promote general knowledge and value demonstrations of systems engineering tools and methods applied to wind energy RD&D. The target audience are wind turbine OEMs and wind plant developers. And we are in phase 2 in the IEA task works in 3 years cycles. We are now in the second cycle that started in October 2019, and we are halfway. We'll run through September 2022. In terms of country participation, the US is well represented. Then we have CNR, Germany with 3 institutes. TU Munich is very active. China, Norway, Denmark, UK, and the Netherlands. Canada and France and others have expressed interests along the way, but they haven't formally joined. The work is split into 4 work packages. The first 3 were common from phase 1 to phase 2, and then the 4th work package is new in phase 2. The first work package is entitled Guidelines for Integrated Wind Turbine Plant Software Frameworks. It's really about defining common definitions, common input files, common data sharing policies. The second work package is about a series of reference turbine and plant designs for supporting integrated analysis activities. I'll have a slide about this. You'll probably have heard of all these reference designs coming out of IEA Wind Task 37. Third work package is about work towards best practice recommendations on multidisciplinary design analysis and optimization applied to wind systems. Here we have been defining exercises, optimization exercises that everybody can run and can exercise their tools on, both on the turbine level and on the plant level. And fourth work package, bad timing given COVID, but it is about workshops with other IEA wind tasks on state-of-the-art in MDAO. It started very well, and then clearly, as you can imagine, it slowed down, but it's still there. We still hope to run more workshops, and we are running a few virtually. I'll talk about them. Work package 1. So these common definitions of input files, output files, and data sharing. We worked a lot about the ontology. The ontology is this a little bit of a fancy word, and to specify how a wind turbine is truly defined and how it should be defined, and the same for the wind plant. And the goals, again, of the work package is share system descriptions and analysis results for supporting more transparent benchmarking and comparisons, and integrate models together into streamlined workflows within and across organizations for improving the efficiency and performance of wind turbine and power plant design processes. We are well on our way with the turbine ontology, and we actually have created the Wind.io project, the Wind Input Output project, which is a GitHub repository. At this link, all these repositories live within the IEA Wind Task 37 family. So it's somewhat easy to remember. If you go to github.com and then IEA Wind Task 37, you'll see all these repositories. The Wind.io is one, and we have the ambition that all MDAO frameworks out there use the same common ontology as input output. And this goal was a little ambitious maybe a few years ago, but now we are getting there. Several of the frameworks out there in the public domain now can read this ontology. If you log into the page, which is fully open source, you'll find all the files, and we also have some nice and complete documentation. The reference wind turbines, I will talk about them in a second. They are all presented and described with this ontology. And if you work with systems engineering, I strongly recommend taking a look at this repository. I've been working a lot on it, and I think it's working very nice these days. For the plant, we are a little bit running behind, but we are also moving ahead. Here it's a visualization of the turbine ontology. We have, which is described as a tree, as you can see here. There are some top-level branches, the name, a list of components, a database of airfoils, materials, an assembly block that specifies how things are combined together, a block of actuators, control, environment, balance of stations, and costs. And then the components is the biggest block. We have blade, hub, nacelle, tower, monopile, foundation, floating platform, and mooring system. These floating platform and mooring system are recent additions. At NREL, we have a pretty big ARPA-E project that is dedicated to the co-design, the control co-design of floating wind turbines. And thanks to this project, we have been developing a floating platform ontology, which is working pretty nicely. So again, we are pretty proud of this result. If you are interested, you can contact me. We can set up a meeting. I'm happy to guide you through. We could talk hours about this. The work is not entirely completed. We still have a working group to cover the drivetrain, and we actually have a working meeting soon. So if you are in the drivetrain world and you want to contribute, please let us know. In terms of plant ontology, as I said, we are lagging a little bit behind, but Chris Begg, colleague of mine at NREL, is pushing the work ahead together with DTU. And we actually have some exciting recent developments with some working frameworks for site and wind plants. And then we have sub-schemas for the turbines. So we obviously incorporate the other schema for the turbine here. And we are also defining some tools, some common tools for handling large amounts of data and wind information, which is relevant for plant systems engineering. And yeah, so Chris is great, and he's coordinating this effort. Reference systems work package 2. We have, you probably have heard at some point about these reference wind turbines in phase 1 together with the, so I was in Munich at that time, and I coordinated the land-based 3.4 megawatt, the design of a 3.4 megawatt land-based wind turbine. The DTU coordinated the redesign of the DTU 10 megawatt. And so we came up with this repo and 2 GitHub repositories with the 10 megawatt offshore new version or refined version of the DTU 10 megawatt, which you are all familiar with, and the about 3.4 megawatt turbines. And they are pretty well used and broadly used. More recently, in phase 2, NREL has coordinated the development of a 50 megawatt floating design, and which attracted quite some attention. Here are some links to magazines and online portals that talked about it. And we have a GitHub repository where Garrett and Jenny Rinker at DTU are working a lot to keep it all in sync and up to date. And we have a HawkTube model, OpenFast model, a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of work going into it. There is also a fixed bottom report. Initially, the machine was designed for fixed bottom, and then we have floating. Thanks to the University of Maine in the US, we now have a floating platform design. Yeah, so it's great work here. A lot of users on these reference turbines. In work package 3, case studies. You remember from the beginning, the case studies are exercises where participants or anyone interested can run examples and test their tools. We had a recent publication from Mike McWilliam at DTU, who presented the work on case studies for the turbine at the IEA, the IEA 2021 virtual conference. The paper is good. We must admit that it was much harder than expected to obtain good match among participants, which justifies some extra work. And Helena Canet, PhD from Carlo Bottasso in Munich, is leading a second round of comparisons. I'm actually working with Helena to try to improve to upgrade the work of Mike. In terms of plan design, BYU in Utah, the Brigham Young University, the group of Andrew Ning led the work, and the work here has been much, I would say, more satisfactory with a better match, and also more challenging, maybe more challenging problems, more participants, and it's probably more interest among the participants. And there should be a journal article coming out of this work. There are various case studies with a single region or multiple regions with concavities or discontinuities in the solution space. So pretty exciting work here from Andrew and his PhD students. Work package 4, workshops. These days it's kind of funny to talk about in-person workshops. We don't even remember what they are, but we had a great one in October 2019, just before all the chaos started. It was in Amherst in conjunction with the NAWIA WindTech conference. It was a workshop together with IEA Wind Task-32 on LiDAR-based control. And we identified various areas of where LiDAR and systems engineering could work together. Here there are some pictures of the meeting. We had a maximum number of participants of 35, and we hit it. We had a good representation of academia, research institutes, and industry. And it was a great meeting, in my opinion. And Eric Simley, who organized the meeting with me, led a paper at TORC 2020. If you look it up, so this is the DOI, but you can just Google it and you'll find it. Very nice summary paper and overview paper. After COVID, so COVID obviously slowed down this series of workshops, but Catherine DTU organized one in November 2020 on Zoom, together with IEA Wind Task 25 on integration, 26 on cost of wind energy. And the workshop was on reference energy systems. The meeting minutes should come out soon. In terms of outreach and dissemination, how are we organized? Well, industry participates during annual meetings, providing technical reviews, commenting on the results, and filling out surveys to help scope the task activities. And all the project deliverables are available to all the participants. In terms of workshop and meetings, so if we go back to 2019, we had the official kickoff and the annual meeting starting there in Pamplona, right before the 5th Wind Energy Systems Engineering Workshop. Then we had this Task 32-37 meeting in Amherst, Massachusetts, later in the year in 2019. Last November, we had this joint workshop organized by Catherine. Last September, we had the last annual meeting held virtually, soon, like right before TORC 2020. And we have monthly meetings among the leadership team. So Catherine, Garrett, myself, Carl, and anyone who is interested. I think Elena, for example, often joins, and others. And then we have regular working meetings, some more focused meetings for this among the sub-package participants. What are we aiming to do before the end of phase 2, which is in 1.5 years? In work package 1, we want to complete the plant ontology, and in terms of the turbine ontology, we still have this drivetrain block, which is there, but it's not great. So we would like to finish it and finalize it. And we have a good draft of the technical report, but it's never been published. So we want to polish it up and push it out. Reference systems, we want to define a reference wind power plant. In terms of turbine, we are just maintaining the models, but for wind power plants, we would like to develop an offshore floating model. Case studies in best practices, Elena Canet-Tum will push out this rotor aerodynamic optimization case study. And Andrew and his team at BYU are refining the plant optimization case studies with some additional disciplines. And we are actually planning one more workshop for the fall of this year on systems engineering and very flexible rotors, and we hope we can. This topic would push the systems engineering methods beyond their boundaries of application, and we hope it could be very interesting and very relevant. And with this, I close my presentation, and I'm happy to take any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Pietro. For the new ones that just arrived, I would like to remember that there is a Q&A panel here in the Zoom application, in case you want to write a question. So we have like 2 or 3 questions for you, Pietro. You said at the beginning of your presentation that you are going to interact with another IEA task. Which are the ones that you are going to interact with?
So we are open to interact with anybody. We work with task 32, the LiDAR, and we have been working with 25 and 26, integration and cost of wind energy. We have had strong discussions and a lot of discussions with task 40 on downwind technology, which is, however, ramping down. So we never, it would have been a natural partner for a workshop, but the task is ramping down, so we're not going to have a workshop there probably. And then NREL is touching basically any IEA wind task. So within NREL, we have a lot of conversations with task 39 on quiet wind turbines for our acoustics, and yeah, all the newer tasks. I think there is a floating maybe new task. I'm not entirely sure, but we are open to talk with anybody and to organize workshops with anybody.
And once this phase 2 ends, is there a plan to extend the task 37, or?
I think it's not decided yet. We are still enjoying the fact that we are 1.5 years away from the deadline.
Yes.
We understood from the IEA Task Commission board that they would like to have projects that start and end, or tasks as they are called, that have a start and an end. So maybe phase 1, maybe phase 1, maybe phase 2, but then some new task, and not just always the same that keeps dragging. But the work is still going. The collaboration is great, and we have some. It's a great platform to collaborate and to talk and to have a framework to exchange ideas and work. So I don't have a good answer for you.
Question more from the technical point of view. You said that some more aerodynamic optimization is going to be performed. What about airfoil optimization? Is also going to be included in this aerodynamic optimization, or you stay only in the blade?
It's a great point. It's a great point where systems engineering frameworks, in my mind, are weak. We are actually working on it at NREL to trying to improve things in our framework. I think Elena is planning some work there, but more about airfoil placement than any airfoil shape optimization itself. I think Elena's tool has, not all tools out there in the public domain can optimize airfoil shapes, which is it's a big challenge. Again, we are working on it technically, so I don't think the case study will be about airfoil optimization. Maybe airfoil placement.
Okay, so I think if there are no more questions, we can move on to the next presentation. Thank you, Pietro, for your talk. Thanks a lot for being there. So we move from one experience task to a new one. We are going to talk about now about task 46, erosion of wind turbine blades. It is going to be presented by Raul Prieto from VTT in Finland, and also by Charlotte by Hassanger from DTU. So Raul is an aeronautical engineer. He works now in VTT, and he previously worked in Ore Catapult and many other industries and research institutions in the field of aeronautics and wind energy. And also we have, as I told you before, Charlotte by Hassanger from DTU, and she's professor in the Department of Wind Energy, Methodology, and Remote Sensing. So, as I told you before, they are going to present task 46, erosion of wind turbine blades. So, Raul, you can share your screen.
Okay, many thanks, Beatriz. Let me, 1 second. All right, so, well, thanks again for this opportunity to introduce here this new task, also under the umbrella of IEA Wind Technology Collaboration Program. Yeah, we, the operating agents, Charlotte and me, will be presenting this task. So bear with us a moment to learn what erosion of blades has in common with loads, aerodynamics, and control, which are the key topics today. Yeah, so yeah, the purpose of this task is to improve our understanding of the erosion driving factors, develop data sets and models.
Sorry, Raul, I don't know if you share your screen. At least I cannot see the presentation. Are you
Okay.
going?
Yes. Let me.
I don't know if Flaminia, you can see the presentation.
No.
Yeah.
No, now.
No.
We can see it now. Okay,
All
thank
right.
you, Raul.
Well, thanks. Yeah. So yeah, as I was mentioning, the purpose of this new task is to improve our understanding of erosion driving factors, as well as to develop models and data sets to enhance prediction of leading edge erosion likelihood, identify damage at the earliest possible stage, and advance potential solutions. So our scope of work covers several technical areas, and it reflects the multidisciplinary nature of this challenge. So yeah, why is blade erosion relevant and deserves a dedicated task? Well, it is still an unsolved issue. We are aware that as of today, blades require costly in situ service. There is an estimate that the net present value for the costs associated to blade erosion, it's around between 2 and 3% of the gross generated energy for an offshore wind turbine. And well, erosion will continue to be challenging, and it will get worse as new offshore projects coming online by 2030 are expected to reach 30 years of operational lifetime. So also it's relevant that if we solve the erosion challenge, we will unlock second round system level improvements as a result of lower drivetrain mass and lower loads, and ultimately lower wind turbine costs. So when we think about what costs are associated to erosion, well, there is one associated to the uncertainty during wind farm planning, as we don't know what's going to be the overall losses for the case, and then, well, this will affect the overall business case. Then very importantly, there is the power curve drop. We have seen earlier today in Senar presentation an estimate for a power drop around 5%. So well, those levels are possible, and they affect the bottom line of the wind farm. Then there is the loss availability due to repairs, as well as the cost of materials associated to the repairs themselves. And then there is a cost associated to the inspection, as well as condition monitoring. So how can IEA help? This topic of erosion is aligned with two of the research priorities established by the IEA Technology Collaboration Program for wind, in particular resource and site characterization, by improving the practices in resource characterization regarding susceptibility to erosion, and to the topic of advanced technology, when we talk about erosion damage models, new materials, characterization of erosion resistance, and wind turbine operation with erosion. So we started almost a year ago with a topical expert meeting that was convened in the context of the erosion symposium organized jointly, well, organized by DTU. And well, we had a good participation and a full day workshop where we set up the skeleton of what would be a joint collaborative effort to establish this task. In the wake of the topical expert meeting, we continue interacting, and last autumn, a proposal was presented to the EXCO and was approved. So now we are preparing to commence the operations of the task. So the scope of work is structured in 4 technical work packages plus management support. The work plan will be delivered in 4 years, and we will commence with a kickoff meeting very soon, 15th of March. And we aim to have about 10 deliverables with high technology readiness level, including recommended practices and validated models, as well as other 15 deliverables associated to literature surveys, state-of-the-art reports, roadmaps, and reports on available technologies. So these work packages are climatic conditions coordinated by Sarah Pryor from Cornell University and Marijn Verraert from Ørsted. Wind turbine operation with Erosion, coordinated by David Maniaci from Sandia National Laboratories. Laboratory testing of Erosion, coordinated by Jacob Istelvik from DTU and Maral Rahimi from Hempel. And erosion mechanics and material properties, coordinated by Fernando Sánchez López from Universidad San Pablo CEU and Bodil Hoss from University of Bergen. So now I would like to give the floor to Charlotte, operating agent, to describe some of these work packages. So.
Charlotte, are you there? Are you connected?
I cannot see her.
Yes. No. Yes. Yes, I see her, but I'm not sure if Charlotte hasn't the role as a
Presenter.
panelist. Maybe she inscribed herself as attendant, normal attendant, and maybe she cannot share the screen.
Yes.
Or even speak, because the mics are mute for the attendants.
Okay.
So that's what she's saying, that she cannot unmute herself. Is there a way to unmute one of the participants, Flaminia?
I just promote her as a panelist.
So, Charlotte, you are promoted. you should speak now, and we can hear you.
Thank you.
Okay, now you are there. You are promoted.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you for
Flaminia.
that. Yes, and then just let me say a few words about the work package about climatic conditions. As we know, wind turbines are deployed in many climate zones, and some are exhibiting more rapid leading edge erosion than others. So the postulate is that wind and precipitation dictate some of that variability. So our objectives are to advance understanding of the atmospheric drivers of leading edge erosion, and to synthesize and evaluate data sets and models in terms of those drivers, and also to develop a roadmap for a leading edge erosion atlas. And then we have several tasks where we'll define geographical areas of special interest, identify the most crucial meteorological parameters, and we'll do some literature reviews on hail, rain, dust, and hydrometeor drop sizes. And then also really important is data availability and the quality of the data. And we aim to make recommended practice for the measurements of the leading edge erosion drivers, meteorological development and prospects for super sites for testing. And finally, as mentioned, a roadmap. So next slide, please. And the coordinator is Sarah Pryor. And the very first thing we are doing is we're establishing a data collection of metadata, rain rates, hydrometeor, phase and size, wind speed, from everywhere we can, in situ networks, ground, satellite, remote sensing, reanalysis, and field experiments. And so the document should be good and sufficient to start characterize drivers across sites. Next, please. And the next work package on wind turbine operation with erosion is headed by David Maniaci. And there are three main objectives. One is to promote collaboration on research to mitigate erosion by turbine control of the viability of erosion safe mode. For those who have not heard, this is to slow down the turbine during heavy rain events when you can say most erosion or damage occur. And then we should improve our understanding of the droplet impingement in the context of erosion and improve our understanding on wind turbine performance in the context. I mean, this is the surface roughness and aerodynamics, like I noticed Beatrice also gave a presentation on this today. The activities are to model and predict annual energy production. And report some about standardization of damage reports, droplet impinge models for fatigue analysis, and again, erosion safe mode. And also very last, but also really important is to see field observations for validation of models. Next, please. Yeah, and not to spend too much time, but there are the models that can be annual energy production. There are standardization reports. The droplet impingement models, erosion tests, and there's also wind tunnel experiments. And erosion safe mode, it's a little more how can we as researchers and industry together move forward in a coordinated way to assess the viability and cost benefit of this operation. And finally, it's tested in wind tunnels to make a more complete and mute myself.
Okay, so so there is a follow-up work package 4, which is about the subject of laboratory testing of erosion, so ensuring that the characterization of the erosion process in the laboratory is sufficiently representative. So we will look at the rain erosion test setup and what can be done to ensure that this process is well defined and the uncertainties are characterized and addressed, as well as the characterization of the material properties relevant to the erosion process in the time scales which are representative of the phenomenon by means of this dynamic mechanical thermal analysis, fracture mechanics, and fatigue. And then to cover also simple tests to indicate the performance of the erosion protective solution by means of tensile, impact, and adhesion tests. So this laboratory testing of erosion has a number of different sub-activities below the work package level in order to gather background knowledge and experience, look at available literatures, and initiate new research collaborations and work in joint publications. And this work package will work in coordination with the next work package 5 about erosion mechanics and material properties. So this work package 5 is about identifying what are the best modeling techniques and material properties, as well as characterization methods to understand the erosion mechanics for leading edge protection system technologies, and to quantify the influence on the performance. So there are 4 activities here around the damage models, specifically analysis of multi-layer systems and their manufacturing challenges, and then looking at the material properties and the microstructure and macroscopic properties in connection with the erosion damage. So yes, I was pointing out, this is about understanding and identifying the damage mechanisms and propose appropriate damage models attending to different operational conditions and failure modes. Proposing individualized modeling approach for each leading edge protection technology depending on the key failure modes due to its integration in the blade for liquid coatings, multi-layer systems, shells, tapes, and also defined the input parameters required to feed and validate the cover erosion models, identify the limits, lags and drawbacks on used material characterization methods, and finally investigate the polymer microstructure and composition to connect the macroscopic material properties with the erosion damage progression. So as of today, we have 16 participants from 8 countries participating in the task, as well as a number of other organizations that are soon to confirm or willing to join at some point in the future. So yeah, I think it is still a good time to join if you are interested and want to explore a potential collaboration in any of those work packages. So if that's the case, please get in touch with Charlotte or myself to discuss further. So thank you very much. Now I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Raul. My first question was precisely that one, if you still accept some new participation. So you answered that yes, that somebody is interested, they can participate. I have another question. Is this task going to collaborate with other IEA tasks as happened in task 37? For instance, with this flow control task that we are talking just before, after that, sorry?
Well, we are starting with this new task, so I think now we have to focus in on our own scope, which is already quite challenging. So, well, maybe in the future, in a follow-up term or ad hoc, if we identify a suitable opportunity, we can collaborate. But that is not as of now in the agenda at the moment. But yeah, we look forward to these opportunities as well. Yeah.
And I have a question from the audience: is that sun erosion is going to be studied within this task?
At the moment, we will put primarily the focus on rain erosion. Yeah, as it is the key driver in offshore in our context. No, but yeah, this could be explored in a follow-up term of the task. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
yeah, I have another question. Do you foresee if it's going to be relevant for the task activities to have wind turbine or wind farm data? And if so, do you expect to have this data from real wind farms?
Yes, we have, let's say, the participation of wind farm owners, such as ENGIE or Ørsted, well, or Equinor. So, and they have been very helpful in shaping the scope and also willing to contribute in kind with data to make the most of our effort in the task. So yes, yeah, we will have this data.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Raul and Charlotte. I think that is time to move to the next presentation.
Thank you.
But I think that we have a shift in the agenda. Amy and Paul are changing their position. So now we will have Amy Robertson from NREL. I saw her there. So I'm going to introduce her a bit, and she's going to talk about Task 30. So Amy is principal engineer at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in the United States. She has worked there since 2010. She's a member of the Offshore Wind Energy team and leads the IEA Tasks 30. That is an international project research focus on the verification and validation of offshore wind modeling tools. And also she's Atlantis Focal project, and also she leads the Atlantis Focal project, which is focused on advancing floating wind scale model testing to enable the validation of control co-design methods and technology. We can see now your screen, Amy, so it's your turn. Thank you.
Great, and can you hear me as well?
Yes, and see your face too, so everything.
All right, great. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to be talking to you today about IEA Wind Task 30, and this is a task that's actually been ongoing for quite a while now. It originated back in 2005, and the original task was called, or the original project was called the OC3 project, which stands for Offshore Code Comparison Collaboration. And it's been extended a number of times over the years. Here you can see OC3, OC4, OC5, and OC6 listed here. So each time we extended the project, we added a C to the name. So now up to the OC6 project, which stands for Offshore Code Comparison Collaboration, Continued with Correlation and Uncertainty. And that's the one that's ongoing presently. So the overarching goal of the OC projects is to verify and validate what we call coupled aerohydroelastic servoelastic tools that are used to design offshore wind systems. So these are the tools that bring together the excitation of wind and waves, as well as the control properties and the structural dynamics, all into one tool for a coupled analysis of an offshore wind system. And this is critical for floating systems where those excitations are so coupled, but they're also useful for fixed bottom systems where we'd like to better optimize our designs. We primarily focus on what we call mid-fidelity or engineering level tools in the task. And so these are the ones that are like open, fast, and bladed. And they're the workhorse tools that run the thousands of simulations that one needs to do in a design process for a wind turbine. But with OC6, we're actually also starting to integrate in higher fidelity tools into our analysis as well. And the goal here really is to validate these tools such that they can be used to do the rapid technology innovation that's needed to lower the cost of offshore wind systems. So at the start of the project back in the mid-2000s, there wasn't really any data available. So we did start off with what we call code-to-code verification of the tools. So this was done by developing a set of benchmark problems, which you can see here on the right, and simulating those benchmark problems in our different modeling tools and comparing those simulations against one another. And that process was able to identify some of the errors in the modeling tools early on and some of the differences between modeling approaches. And that was really the guiding development of these offshore wind modeling tools over the years. Starting with OC5, we did start to have some data available to us. So we moved on to what we call validation, where we were able to now compare our simulations against real world measurements. So this is an overview here of the OC5 project, which ran from 2015 to 2018, in which we modeled at first just a monopile and a wave tank, and then moved on to a fully functioning scaled floating wind system, also tested in a wave tank. And then the third phase, we moved on to a full-scale commercial wind system with the Alpha Ventus jacket. And with the ability to now compare to actual measurement data, we were able to identify which simulation approaches were best able to represent reality and identify what modeling tool improvements were needed for these different tools. So now in the present project of OC6, we've shifted our focus a bit. We're no longer just looking at a variety of benchmark problems. We're now looking at specific issues that we've identified in the past or decided are important to address for the validity of these modeling tools. So to plan for OC6, we developed what we call here a phenomenon identification ranking table, which you can see here on the right, a PERT. And in this, we identify what we think the critical phenomena are for accurately representing a floating wind turbine in terms of its loads and performance. We rank the importance of those phenomena, whether we understand the physics well, the adequacy we think of our models, and whether a validation campaign on that phenomena would be useful for better understanding it. So based on that, if we identify things with high importance, low knowledge and high validation needs, we've highlighted those with the yellow line here, and that really guided what we wanted to focus on within this OC6 project. Another thing that's unique about the OC6 project compared to the past is that we are incorporating in these higher fidelity tools now. So we're implementing what we call a three-way validation, shown here in the middle between these engineering level tools, high fidelity tools, and our measurement data. And the reason for these higher fidelity tools is that we are seeing that our lower fidelity tools aren't able to accurately model the systems in all conditions and all types. And so our goal here is to identify whether higher fidelity model tools can, and then try to understand how we can use those high fidelity tools to either tune the lower fidelity tools or improve the modeling approaches. Okay, so these are the 4 different phases of OC6. We are currently just ending phase 2 and about to start phase 3. And I'll go over a little bit of each phase in detail in the following slides. Okay, so OC6 phase 1 was focused on an issue we identified previously within the OC5 project, and that was that for floating semi-submersible wind turbines, we found that their motion in the water at their surge and pitch natural frequencies was being significantly underpredicted by our modeling tools. And that resulted in a significant underprediction of the loads in the system. So we ended up doing our own test campaigns for OC6, in which we dove into trying to understand what the reasons were for those underpredictions by breaking apart the hydrodynamic components that were acting on the wind turbine. So we did 2 different sets of tests here at Marin that you can see here represented on the right. And through that testing, what we found was that we actually were underpredicting the motion and loads on the system in a variety of different conditions. We attempted to look at trying to tune our models for a specific hydrodynamic component. And what we found was that when we would tune our model for one condition, it would actually make the results for a different condition worse. So our conclusion was that we were fundamentally missing some physics in our modeling approaches. So again, here we're starting to look at the higher fidelity models to understand whether they can accurately represent these systems and better understand why our lower fidelity tools cannot. And that higher fidelity analysis is actually still ongoing at this point. It's a bit more cumbersome with these high fidelity tools to run these very long simulations that are needed for floating wind systems. So it's different than just land-based wind, where you run these 10-minute simulations. When you're in the water, you have to consider the wave interaction, and the wave interaction is more on a 3-hour time scale. And so we're running these much longer simulations, which are more difficult with these high fidelity tools. So that work is still presently ongoing. So we just are wrapping up OC6 phase 2, and the focus here was on bottom fixed offshore wind systems. And when you consider a bottom fixed system, the way that the piles or the foundation of that offshore wind system interact with the soil will significantly affect the global dynamics of the system. So in this phase, we looked at trying to integrate in a higher fidelity approach to representing that soil structure interaction. Traditional methods used in industry include apparent fixity, improved apparent fixity, distributed springs, and coupled springs. But here we were introducing a new capability coming out of the Red Wind project in Norway, led by the Norwegian Geotechnical Institute, which is a macro element approach that they developed. So in this project phase, our focus was just integrating in this new capability into our coupled offshore wind modeling tools, and then verifying that that capability had been implemented correctly. So we were able to do that coupling to a number of different tools that you can see listed here, including SEMA, OpenFast, Bladed, Flow9, Hawk2, SAMSEF, and OrcaFlex. And we used an example problem of a monopile system from the WAS Excel project to do the verification of the implementation. And as I said, we're just finishing that up. Here are some example results on the right. Basically, we found that we were able to implement the capability well. Simulation results compared favorably against each other and against industry standards. There were some differences seen, but the industry methods that we compared to, like apparent fixity, most of those methods did not include a damping component in their modeling. And so their results, as you can kind of see in some of these plots, are larger than those for the Red Wind model. We also found that the nonlinearity in the different models had different effects because of the nonlinearity will shift your system frequencies. And if you start shifting the structural frequencies of your system such that they interact more with the waves, or with blade passing frequencies such as 9P, you could tend to get more excitation. So again, you can see how getting that right flexibility, the right boundary conditions is important to understanding the amount of loads that you'll see in your system. Okay, so we're about to kick off OC6 phase 3 now, and this one is focused on validating aerodynamic loading of our modeling tools when they're undergoing large motion, such as would be caused by a floating wind system. The data set that we'll be using is from the Uniflow project, and it's based on a previous study by the LICE50 project. The data comes from a wind tunnel in the Politecnico di Milano in Italy, which is shown here on the right. They've built a system where they have a robot excitation at the base of this wind turbine that allows it to be forced to move in different motions, resembling a floating wind turbine, but within a nice wind tunnel with nice wind quality. For this project, we'll be looking at just forced surge motion, so motion in and out of the wind, and looking at our measurements of our loads on our tower, as well as wake measurements behind the turbine during that forced motion. Again, we'll be looking at trying to look at different fidelities of models, so BEM type models, free vortex wake methods, as well as CFD, and we'll be examining a variety of different surge frequencies and amplitudes. We actually have a kickoff for that project March 16th. So if you are interested, people are welcome to join, but you do have to be a member of the task. But we are doing a collaboration on this task with the new IEA Task 47, formerly 29, which is focused on aerodynamics. So if you're involved in either of those tasks, you're welcome to join the study. This slide just shows a quick overview of those who are involved in the OC6 project. So you can see it involves a lot of different countries and a lot of different organizations from across industry, including certifiers, researchers, universities, industry members, etc. And finally, the work from these projects are openly available to the public, except for the one project phase focused on the Alpha Ventus system because it's a commercial system. Here I list the different places where we have the data lying, but we're trying to move over to this data archive and portal that the Department of Energy has developed, which is a clearinghouse for wind data sets, for a good, easy place for people to find a variety of wind data sets. So here you can see the link for OC5, and then we'll be uploading OC6 data as it becomes available. Okay, and thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Amy. We have 2 or 3 questions from here. So the first one, if we go to the industry level, the platform, the offshore wind turbine platforms industry, how do you see the need of experiment versus the use of CFD computations, for instance?
So as we've been seeing, so these systems, floating wind systems especially, can be very complex. And so depending on what your goal is in terms of the uncertainty and the load estimates you're getting, at this point, for certain conditions, certain geometries, you would need to have a higher fidelity model if you'd like to get to these lower levels of uncertainty. The models that we work with presently, these engineering level models, work well for industry because the level of uncertainty is not that stringent. So we're talking about, say, 20% under predictions in the loads that we're seeing from these engineering models. And based on the level of safety and certainty that they place within the design process, these actually work well. Our goal, though, is to lower that uncertainty, so try to improve upon that so we can seek to get even more optimized designs beyond those kind of uncertainty bands that we presently have.
Even though we improve the tools, the experiments will always be there, I assume, or maybe reduced, but will be there during the project. So how will you order the experiments and the computations? You perform everything at the beginning of the computations and then make the experiments at the end of the project? Or the other way around, you start with an experiment of the platform that you are designing and then compute and change things if you, what will you say here, Amy?
Yeah, so I mean, the oil and gas industry has been doing this for many decades, and their process has been to kind of do the testing at the end after you have a design that you've built to kind of ensure that your system really does behave as you expect. So I assume that's going to be a similar process for offshore wind. I think the goal, though, is with these higher fidelity models to move into a regime where we don't actually have to do that physical testing. If we can start relying on these higher fidelity models, have confidence in them, have validated them, such that they can essentially replace the need to do some physical testing. And so again, while your design process will highly rely on these workhorse engineering level fidelity tools, we would be incorporating in these higher fidelity tools kind of as a check for the knowledge that we're gaining from the lower fidelity tools. So we can see potentially that possibility of not having to do physical testing in the future.
Okay, I think that Antonio also has a question.
Yeah, hello, Amy. Okay, listening to all we explained about the task, I might have a thought that I don't think is right, but the thought is there. And I will maybe think that this task is aiming in this benchmark or code comparison to end up with a code winner. You know what I mean? Like the code that is simulating the best. I don't think that's the purpose of the task. And that's should I think that in the task we are looking more to understand what physical phenomena are still not well simulated, and this is what we are looking for? How can you explain these kind of ideas?
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, I would say it's exactly the opposite of finding a winner. The way we run our tasks is we have a example problem that we're trying to work on that, as I've been showing you here, and we work very collaboratively on these simulations over a long period of time, like a year. So we all simulate these models, then we look at the results and we try to understand what the differences are, and we all work together to improve or address the differences. So our end goal is actually to have all the tools working in the same way, having the best results that we think that we can get. So yeah, it's not to identify which tools are bad or which tools are good, but to try to kind of get all tools having similar capabilities and working to their best of their abilities. Okay. I couldn't remember, sorry, what was the second part?
Yeah, and finally, is you answer it, but the question was, so then what you're looking for is to understand which physical phenomena are still not well simulated with the tools, I guess.
Yeah, so as I said in OC6, we've kind of narrowed. So in the original, we were looking at benchmark problems, trying to identify where our tools were having limitations. We think we've done that enough that we've been able to identify specific areas that need more study, and that's what we're doing here within OC6. So here we've focused in on specific phenomena, but within those kind of general problems or specific phenomena, within those themselves, we're also trying to understand, what are the physics, what are the modeling approaches that best represent those physics. And we, of course, haven't addressed all the phenomena that are critical out there. And so, there's still the potential to keep extending this project to address more of the phenomena that we need to consider as well.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much, Amy. I know that it's really early there in the United States, so we really appreciate the effort.
Yeah, we got a bit of snow last night too, so that's why there's a little chaos this morning.
Okay, thank you, Amy. So we are going.
Thank you very much, Amy.
For the last presentation of the workshop. So this presentation is focused on task 44, another new IEA task. Focus on wind farm flow control, and it is going to be presented by Paul Fleming, that we see him there. He is senior engineer at NREL, and he has been working there for the last 12 years. He got a PhD in electrical engineering at the Vanderbilt University in 2008. And Paul is going to talk about this task 44 related to wind farm flow control. So thank you, Paul. You can share your screen.
Yeah, I think, do I need to be made a presenter in order to share my screen? I'm sorry.
I think that you are already a presenter and you only have to share your screen.
Oh, first of all, open the presentation.
Yes.
The presentation is open. Ah, here it is. Excuse me.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. So I hope you can see it now.
Yeah, we see it and we listen to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so yes, thank you very much for including me. Sorry for all the chaos this morning. We got a bunch of snow and effects on our childcare. But yes, I'm Paul Fleming at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and together with my co-operating agent, Willem van Rigerden of TU Delft, we'd like to present to you our new task 44 in wind farm flow control. And yeah, I'll get started. Thank you. So farm flow control is the topic of trying to coordinate the control systems of individual turbines with the goals of maximizing energy extraction and reducing structural dynamic loads, and just overall finding opportunities to maximize the value of wind energy and to minimize the cost. Here's one example of farm flow control where turbines are using their yaw control systems to affect changes to the flow that increase the power production of the overall farm by reducing the wake losses of downstream turbines. Shown above are LES simulations of this strategy called wake steering. And below are the measured power production levels from the LES simulations. You'll see that we used a engineering model to design the controller Flores. There are a number of such codes out there. But we really want to go over time from simulation studies and benchmark studies to full-scale adoption. Today, most turbine inner control loops are based on measurements they take for themselves. So their own rotor speeds and information about the wind is used in some of the supervisory control strategies. But there's not too much sharing of information or mutual objectives applied in control. And we see farm flow control activating a few additional quadrants of possibilities. One are having turbines not share information, but work towards a common objective of maximize farm power or something like that. Or on the lower left quadrant, keeping their individual objectives, but using shared information to achieve it. So having some sort of a structure in place that they can share information about flow, what's coming, things like that to better do their own individual control. And then finally, the final goal of realizing true multi-turbine wind farm control in the lower right. Based on literature that we've worked on or read, you often see 1 to 2% AEP gains for existing wind farms as being a possibility of wake reduction strategies, but perhaps higher possibilities for newer sites, larger rotor offshore sites, and when wind farm control is incorporated into the overall design strategy, there are other mechanisms for improvement. Similarly, for centralized and distributed controls, we've seen one all the way up to higher percentages depending on the opportunities present in the system. But how do we bring these technologies into widespread use? So this chart is something we presented when we proposed our task, which is saying that, looking back 20 years, there's a lot of research and development on wake models and how to produce both high fidelity and engineering models of wakes. Over the last 10 years, there's a growing amount of research in these different farm flow controls technologies like wake steering I showed, but also induction control, dynamic induction control, wake mixing control. Looking back even more recently, we see more and more validation campaigns taking place, either going, in the early days, mostly wind tunnels, but increasingly we see at full scale at commercial sites, small subset farm tests. And today, really the development of the control strategies that can be used in the actual situation. So real-time control strategies with robustness to sensor issues or turbines going offline and things like that. But we still have this, I think, gap between wide-scale adoption and trust, which is where we see the IEA Task 44 fitting in, with sort of the high-level goals of collecting and organizing and disseminating research and best practices, cataloging and quantifying uncertainties. So all of the remaining major hurdles to wind farm control adoption, collection and reporting on control algorithms to enable large-scale applications. So, overcoming the difficulties that come from going from small-scale tests of a few turbines to very large farms or fleet-wide adoption, and interaction and dissemination between researchers and various stakeholders. So Task 44 has a few high-level objectives. One is to maximize the value of wind energy in systems and markets by increasing the energy which can be produced from wind power plants, lower the cost of land-based and offshore wind energy by reducing the wake-induced loading of wind turbines, and to foster the collaboration, and exchange of practices between researchers and OEMs, developers, things like that. So far, our the main thing we've accomplished, this is a new task, has been our initial topical experts meeting on the topic. This was organized in 2019. We brought together people from wind turbine manufacturers, wind farm developers, wind energy consultancies, academics, and laboratory researchers, and looked at this topic area, had some good discussions, and also made some useful questionnaires of this people's opinion and definition of the state of the art in farm flow control and what was important to do next. And this really led to the construction of the task. Based on the feedback we got from those sessions, it helped to structure what the task would be about. So some high-level results are that 84% of the experts agree that wind farm control will be widely adopted in the future. But also 78% believe there's a need for standard reference and validation tools and methods. So I would say in a high level, a broad agreement that some forms of these will go forward and see wide-scale adoption, but there are still some big work to be done. Looking at some of the questions that we asked, like I said, wind farm control will be broadly adopted, large amounts of agreement. There's a lack of reliable tools, high-level agreement. And then just looking at why we should develop wind farm control, the AEP benefits we asked about, given these range of AEP benefits I talked about earlier, it's worth it if that's the only advantage. There was agreement there. The theory of wind farm control is mature. There was agreement that that's not right. And wind farm control is only applicable to newly designed farms was also very consensus disagree. Now that we have been accepted to have this new task, we have started organizing, and that consists of putting things in work packages and getting members involved. And I'll just quickly go through the work packages that we are kicking off. Work package 1 is the collection of research results, where we hope to produce an overview on preferred terminology for wind farm control to get to a standard language. Construct a web-based database which organizes and disseminates state-of-the-art wind farm flow control research and development, as well as continuing to collect and distribute these expert elicitation results, and put together wind farm best practices and wind farm control best practices and recommendations. Work package 2 will focus on uncertainty quantification. So here, really working with various expert stakeholders on what are the sources of uncertainty, what are the practical problems, what are the things that we don't know and that we need to fix, and create a best practice benchmark workshop with industry on collecting uncertainties and practical issues, an overview paper with the uncertainty set and the benchmark case. Work package 3 is focused on solutions, so looking to evaluate different hardware infrastructure needs for published control methods. So if you wanted to actually implement at a wind farm a certain control method, what would be the practical implementation steps? Workshop with industry on the practical issues and upscaling, and a database with all the publicly available algorithms for control. And finally, work package 4 is focused on interactions with other related projects, some of them shown on the right here, where we hope to have collaborative workshops, including new trends and roadmap of wind farm control research activities. Looking ahead, we're currently focused on organizing country participation and planning a virtual kickoff meeting coming this June. We just now have a website. It's here if you'd like to follow developments or get in touch with us. Our contact information is listed on that website. And yeah, very excited for this future development in wind farm control and sort of going into the future collaboratively together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for your presentation. I wanted to make a question that also did this morning in the control session, that I encouraged you to have a look to that one, because there were very interesting presentation by Jan Bielen, also from Carlo Botasso, in this control topic. And I make a question to them from the audience, and I'm going to make it to you too. So the question is, from your point of view, which are the reasons impeding the widely industrial adoption of wind farm control, being such a positive technology?
Yeah, thank you. That is a good question. I think there's probably just a range of, and it's going to depend on who's impeded. So I think at a broad level, there is a little bit just, it would be helpful if the technology was, had more open validation and more agreed upon value. So if OEMs and things are doing things in-house, or consultants are doing in-house, it becomes maybe harder to compare between. So if someone offers a technology to know if that value is appropriate. So I think the more that things are published and demonstrated, and models are made open and results are shared, it will be more and more possible to evaluate.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. I have another question from you. Task 44, the question, I'm going to read it. Task 44 is focused in control itself, but how do you see the need for reliable tools mentioned in the questionnaire?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And we will be including the tools are essentially part of the development analysis of the controller. So a lot of the controllers will have an internal model of the farm that makes up the controller, that it's, so for instance, estimating the model. So we're really tightly tied into the quality of the models used to design the controller, and then possibly are internalized to the controller. And so in my own work, model validation has been most of the effort to date. And I think now we're really only ready to start really focusing on the control algorithms, which are meant to help adapt the models to changing or erroneous conditions, as well as overcome errors in the model through feedback or feed forward or something like that.
Oh, thank you very much. I have another question for you. I saw in one of your slides that you have a large validation campaign. I mean, large in terms of time, many years of validation campaign. But I still wonder if is in the scope of this task to do a let's say a validation by testing wind farm control strategies in a real large wind farm. What I mean large is I don't know, 10, 20 wind turbines. Is this in the scope of this task? Would you really aim for that?
Yeah, well, and I think by that we mean like different partner institutes like NREL will be involved with those tests and can bring those results to. And so there's also these big European collaborative projects that have tests, and the idea is to bring these results and findings together. So more than the task running tests like farm tests, it's meant to engage with the various research groups that are doing those tests and try to get to shared learnings and standards ultimately on what we're seeing and what has worked and not worked. And a real emphasis, I think, on practical implementation. So, you know, if you take an example like a 5 subset wind farm control experiment that was a success, that might show that the model is working, but how would you know, what is stopping you from going to a 200 turbine wind farm? And that's probably just a lot of different expert knowledge on what needs to, you know, safety wise, and, you know, what happens when turbines go down or curtailment applied. So just a lot of, I would say, collaboration across expert domains on how to get that done.
Okay. Well, Paul.
So I think that's all. I would like to say thank you to all of you, because we didn't expect it so high participation, more than 100 people during the morning and around 60 now in the evening. So we are really, really happy. It has been really interesting to have all these type of presentations, and I think that we lost the travel and met people face to face, but this online things gave the opportunity to us to gather a lot of people around a topic. So we are really, really happy. I have to say something. The presentations are being recorded, so I think that Flaminia will send to all of us, the speakers and also the attendees, the link to see the presentations again, of if we didn't have the option because we are in the USA, for instance. And from my side, it has been a pleasure. So I give the word to Antonio to close all this.
Not too many words on top of what you just said already. Very, very happy to congratulate you, Beatriz, because I think it was a very successful workshop. I hope the feeling of success is shared with all of you. And thank you very much to everybody, to all the participants. And
also thank you, Flaminia, for
of course,
helping us.
Of course, Flaminia.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.